Ben Shapiro, the man who once tweeted this, had this to say about the situation in Palestine.
The vast majority of Palestinians are not people, presumably, who want to engage in violence and terrorism. But there are a lot of people in that community who do, in fact, want to engage in violence and terrorism, and those people tend to occupy the highest rungs of Palestinian governmental structures. Hamas runs at the Gaza Strip. It is an open terrorist group. Islamic Jihad and Fatah are the other groups that run Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank. Okay, those groups are terrorist groups. They've been terrorist groups for a very long time.
Here's my response.
The vast majority of
Israelis
are not people, presumably, who want to engage in violence and terrorism. But there are a lot of people in that community who do, in fact, want to engage in violence and terrorism, and those people tend to occupy the highest rungs of
Israeli
governmental structures.
Israel
runs at the Gaza Strip. It is an open terrorist group.
The IDF
And
Likud
are the other groups that run Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank. Okay, those groups are terrorist groups. They've been terrorist groups for a very long time.
And there you go, the truth. He went on to say a lot of other nonsense, but to be honest, I don't feel like disputing the points one by one. This is what Zionists love to do. They love to justify their racist and murderous apartheid regime by bogging you down in their version of the details. Ben Shapiro and other Zionists are liars. They take racist apartheid systems and call it security. They take offensive onslaughts and call it self-defense. They take settler colonization and call it the right to exist. They take a Jewish supremacist state with privileged rights for one class of people over another and call it democracy. These people are sick and delusional liars, and we shouldn't waste our time debating their talking points, because it allows them to distract folks from the ultimate reality that they are responsible for. It allows them to clutter and shift the narrative with all sorts of lies to the point that the facts no longer matter and nothing ever gets done. They love to move the goalpost. When we want to talk about democracy, equal rights, human rights, ending the occupation, a one-state solution, and end to racist apartheid systems, they want to distract and talk about anti-Semitism, suicide bombers, and a million other excuses for why they can't make peace. The truth is, they don't want to make peace because they don't have to make peace. No one is forcing them to. They are totally fine with war because they have the upper hand. They are better at violence than the Palestinians are, and they can inflict more damage with little to no consequences. So why would they make peace? These Zionists have the gall to call Palestinians violent. Israelis are some of the most violent people on the planet. Take a look at this clip of average Israeli citizens roaming the streets of Jerusalem.
To kill Arabs. No.
I would carpet bomb them.
They have more guns, more bombs, more tanks, more planes, and they've dropped more artillery, more white phosphorus than Palestine ever could, more than Palestine ever has. So these people have no problem with violence. They just believe that they are the only ones entitled to it. So that's why I hate shifting the goalposts. The question isn't whether or not boycotting Israel is legal. The question is whether or not the US should bomb Israel right now. Israel is a racist, violent, murderous state that does not comply with international law, respect human rights, and they actively interfere with US affairs and manipulate them for their own interests. They need to be stopped, and the only way to do this is by the use of force. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I used to be a divestment activist. I spent my college years urging my university to divest their money from Lockheed Martin because they were supplying weapons to the Israelis. But now my position has shifted. I am no longer calling for divestment, but rather investment. We would like Lockheed Martin to also sell weapons to the Palestinians. It's a great way to create peace in Palestine while also stimulating the US economy. Let's see how eager Israelis are for war when the Palestinians also have the ability to fly F-15s over their airspace or fire artillery from the hillside. I may be half joking to make a point here, but seriously, let's consider India-Pakistan for a moment. Tensions flare up between both sides all the time. Why haven't they escalated into an active hot war? They've been threatening to annihilate each other since the very beginning. It's because of mutually assured destruction. There is balance, there is parity in the relationship. Both nations have powerful allies and powerful militaries. With Palestine, there is no balance. The Israelis have a monopoly on violence. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. The US should be providing the Palestinians with weapons. If I call my political representative today, which I won't because it's a waste of time, but if I did, I'd be asking them to sell weapons to the Palestinians. And if they ask me how we plan to pay for it, I'd tell them, use my tax dollars, just like we do with the state of Israel. I don't consent to that. I don't want to supply Israel with my tax dollars, but we do. So why can't we do it for Palestine? And you know what? If the US is going to pick a dog in this fight, they should choose the Palestinians. You know who the Palestinians are? Freedom fighters. They are the revolutionaries. They're George Washington, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Paul Revere. You think if George Washington were in Gaza today, he would be resisting peacefully? He'd be asking people to sign his petition? The founding fathers went to war over taxes and tea. If they were dealing with the Israelis, they'd be chanting, "Give me liberty or give me death," every single day of their lives. Americans can't even put on a mask without resistance. You think they're gonna walk on segregated roads, have their homes invaded, bulldozed, get tear gassed, and burnt alive with white phosphorus? Now, obviously, providing weapons to either side isn't really the greatest idea. So perhaps instead, the US should decide to stop sending Israel weapons. Stop giving them unconditional aid. Stop creating the power imbalance. If we are serious about peace, stop wasting taxpayer dollars to fund Israeli violence.